Hi, and welcome to the New Writer Podcast, where you can discover new writers and new stories. I am your host, Matt Brotherton, and with me tonight is thriller author J.H. Bográn. Did I pronounce that right? I should have asked that too before the show.
There's a little accent on the last day, but you did a good job.
Thank you. Jose is a thriller writer who I just checked your books out today. I meant to do it yesterday, last night. I was wanting to get some time to read through the preview, but I'm behind on my own deadlines. So, but you've written 3 thrillers and a bunch of short stories. You want to tell us about your work real quick?
All right. Well, the first one, it's called Treasure Hunt. It's about, obviously, a treasure hunt involves a thief who is hired to recover some money stolen some 20 years ago. It's loosely based on the story of D.B. Cooper stealing the 727 back in the 70s. Well, as luck should have it, there is also a Honduran with a different name who attempted the same stunt. So I based it a little bit on both, and the result was that the Honduran jumped out in a parachute and came to Honduras and hid the money in a cave. So I took that basis and I went forward 20 years when the guy gets out of prison and tries to retrieve the money. Enters the Falcon, the main character of Treasure Hunt. So this is the old cover, by the way. Today is the launching of the new cover, but it's still not printed. But sooner or later you'll see it on Amazon, the new cover with a 727 right in front. So that's the old one. That was published in 2005, one of the first ebooks when ebooks was not even a thing back then. And after that, I was contracted by Reveille Publisher, and they were nice enough to publish this novel last year, which is called Firefall. This one, it's about a firefighter who loses his family, and then he starts investigating insurance fraud, and he gets into a lot of trouble doing that. He gets strapped to a chair during torture by a former KGB agent, so it's kind of interesting.
So that sounds pretty cool. I worked in the insurance industry as like a data entry person when I was in high school, in my freshman year of college. So I know the type of people who work as like claims adjusters and investigators, and they can be some pretty weird characters sometimes. So I think that I'm going to have to check that one out.
Yes, the fun part is that he's not into that, actually. He was after the accident of his wife and kid. He's basically a widower, no family. He's basically an orphan. And his brother makes an intervention with some uncle, and they get this job for him. They change his city from New York City to Dallas, and to Houston. And he starts investigating insurance fraud. And it's funny because he starts running into problems that he didn't know. At least he had the common sense to figure a couple of things out, but it's basically in training.
I always thought being an insurance investigator was the really awesome way to get to like pretend you're an FBI agent without having to go to college to become an FBI agent in criminology and all that stuff. I always thought it was like the happy medium. It was something I would love to do.
Exactly. And you know what? It's interesting, the kind of cases that you have to discover that you find out when you're doing the research. Like people, setting their own houses on fire or crashing cars on purpose and all that. But I went a little bit ahead, and this one is, he gets involved with a ring of car thieves. And by the way, Firefall is actually located in Honduras. The climax, it starts in New York, moves to Houston, and then comes back to Honduras for the climax. And so there's a ring of car thieves here, and he stumbles into them by mistake. He's not actually investigating that, but he crosses paths with them and ends up in a chair during torture. And it's a funny torture. I actually like that torture scene. It's pretty cool.
Okay, so you write thrillers, and obviously you have done some research. I don't do research very often. So if you were going to give me advice on how to go about doing that sort of stuff, how do you get into your research mode?
Well, there's two type of writers, and the write from the seat of your pants and the planner. So I'm the one who writes a list of things that what the book will be about, and after I write that list, I kind of figure out what I'll need to research, and okay, I know this, I don't know this, and what the hell is this? And then I start investigating that. And that was a beautiful thing of the internet age, that you can travel, you can investigate from the seat of your house, and that's pretty amazing. Before that, the first book that I did was written in Spanish, and there was, before the internet was loaded with so much information, so I had to do a lot of trips to the, to libraries and read a lot of books, and go through a lot of things to find out just what I just need for like a paragraph. So it's funny, but if you make a list of the things that you need to know, then you start investigating off those. And of course, then when you're writing, you get in the mood and things change, and then, oh, then I don't know this, and then you stop and do that late research. But basically, from the synopsis.
And so when you're writing and you hit one of those points where you're like, oh, I don't know how fire hydrants actually work, because that's something I don't really know. Do you stop right there and then go and do the research before you continue, or do you just placeholder?
No, if I do that, I lose the idea. So I try to finish whatever I can make up with at that moment, because, well, first of all, I'm writing in the middle of the night, so it's I finish the scene, put a little marks on it, and then investigate either after I finish that or the next day. But if you stop in the middle of writing, then you will never get it done. I mean, finish what you're doing and then move to the next thing.
See, I actually had to go out and buy like a Chromebook, and then I drive miles away from the city to do my writing, because if I have any internet access at all, I'm now lost on Wikipedia for 6 hours. So I cannot, I know exactly what you mean, I cannot stop at all.
Firefall was written actually in an old clone computer, and when I mean old, I'm saying that it was Windows Millennium Edition. Didn't have internet, didn't have a modem. I mean, it would take literally 5 minutes. I would power it up and go to serve, and drink a cup of wine or whatever, and then come back and start typing, because and that was my best writing time whenever I was working on that machine, because no distractions.
I used to do IT, and the company I did IT for, they were on Windows 2000 computer systems. It was network ready, but we bought new computers in 2001, and then again right before I left the company in 2012. So we were still using Windows 2000 and 2012, and I know what you mean, because and the computer just runs slow. So if you change Windows, then you get all thrown off, and you're like, oh well, I guess I might as well just stay even in this one document.
The computer was so old that to try to make it a little bit faster, I tried loading it with Ubuntu.
Mm-hmm.
The Linux-based one. And they didn't have a Ubuntu version light enough for that computer. It didn't load up any of the versions.
Like not even like Ubuntu with the XFE interface, because that's designed for really.
I tried I think it was the super light one, and it didn't power up. I mean, I stopped reading the CD-ROM, which I believe was a 24x CD-ROM.
Yeah, see this. I guess you can't see it on the camera. Like, there's another computer right behind me, and it runs Linux. So.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, I have to say this. I know very little about Honduras. I learned today that you're in the same time zone that or it's the same time here as it is there, which was awesome to me. Although you should be in the central time zone, so you guys don't have daylight savings time.
Well, we don't have savings time, so that means that by the time you change it, I'll be in tune with Central Time.
Okay. See, I'm originally from Kansas City, so I'm used to Central Time. So tell us about Honduras and how, like, obviously both of your books take place in Honduras, so...
One of them doesn't, actually.
Okay, let us into that world, though. Like, tell us, like, when you were writing the parts for New York and Austin, or Houston, how much difference and, different the cultural aspect, how much was that, like, a big impact on what you were doing?
Well, first of all, Honduras is beginning here. It's a beautiful country. It's a lot of vegetation. We do have certain, whatever problems we have with politicians. They don't know what to do in the country as any other country in the world. But the flag of Honduras is it's blue with a white stripe, and we have 5 stars. And so I like to say that I live in a 5-star country because of it. It's a very mixture of cultures here. I mean, we already have iPhone 6 here, but on the next street you can find a Nokia from 2005. So there's a lot of cultural mix. We are infatuated, most of the population, I would think, with the United States and the American way, because for a long time there were 2 banana companies that were working in Honduras, and they were the major employers in the country. There is a part actually in Firefall. The company, the Chiquita brand, had the operation in a town called Tela, and the local name was Tela Railroad Company because in addition to the bananas, they used to run the train. But there is a couple of places in Tela, which is a Spanish-speaking country, that have named places in English. One of them is Highland Creek. And the original title for Firefall was Highland Creek because I was driving through Tela and I found a name in English in a Spanish-speaking country, and I'm a native Spanish speaker writing in English, so I kind of figured it made sense. But just before publication, we decided that Highland sounded too much like Irish whiskey. So we switched to Firefall. I made a small contest with a couple of writers' friends, and one of them came up with Firefall, so the name stuck.
So you're a native Spanish speaker who writes in English. Are you planning on also releasing your books in Spanish?
I will not do the translation because that's a lot of work, and I have so many ideas in my head that I don't want to lose the time translating them. I do write. I have like an alternate or parallel career in Spanish. I've written one novel called Heredero del Mal, which is but that's one in Spanish. That's Heredero del Mal. It's basically Heir of Evil. And you will see Hitler here because it's a thriller. It's about a guy who, when he turns 30 years old, they tell him that he is the grandson of Adolf Hitler. And of course, the Mossad wants to kill him. Of course, the new neo-Nazi movements, they want him as martyr, and they also want to kill him. So it's a big chase. But that was in Spanish, and it was published locally. And I also write scripts for a couple of domestic television and domestic movies.
I saw that on your website, and I was kind of interested in that because I love television and movies, and I was wondering, like, how does someone do that? How does someone get into doing screenwriting?
In my case, I don't know how other people do it. In my case, it was a mistake. I was running a video store. I love movies, I love television, and obviously I had a video store at one point in my life. And I was standing in the video store one night, and this guy comes in, and we start talking. He was an old professor, and he wanted some Buster Keaton movies. First of all, he was surprised that I knew who Buster Keaton was to begin with. And so we started chatting, and as it turned out, he was a movie producer, and he was making a television series. And when I told him, hey, I want a part in it, he looked at me and say, oh, man, another guy who thinks Brad Pitt. But when I told him, no, I want to write it, and I said, oh, okay, good, because I don't have writers. So he gave me my first chance, and that's my first credit. It was called La Fortaleza, or The Fortress. It's based in a small town called Omoa, and there's a little fortress that used to be against pirates, served fighting against pirates. And for a time period, it would serve as a prison also during the 1940s. So it was based on that. Then this same producer hired me again for another TV series that I made some connections, and then somebody offered me to write this last movie called Once Cipotes, which means 11 kids. And of course, it's about soccer. 11 kids, that's what you need to make a soccer team, so that's basically what it's about. Honduras religion is soccer. Well, we call it football here, but I don't want to confuse your audience.
Yeah, that's soccer is growing in popularity in the United States, and even here in the U.S., real soccer enthusiasts call it football, and it's becoming just like this cultural clash.
Yes.
I could get into, seriously, like deeply into the topic of American football and rugby and soccer and how they're all descendants of the same sport, but it's that's the type of
right there.
That's the type of geek I am. That's how I end up on Wikipedia looking for 6 hours. So when you're writing for TV shows, you're writing a completely different genre in shows and movies than when you're writing books. I've heard a lot of people say that screenwriting is a good lesson in like story structure for novelists. Would you say that because of your experience doing the TV shows and the movies that it helps you set up the structuring and story for your books?
I would think that it helped. The structure that I use, well, first of all, I have a very visual mind. Whenever I'm writing something, I can close my eyes and I can see it in my mind, basically. And it was funny that I had a problem on the first couple of drafts of the screenplays that I wrote, because I was telling the director where to put the camera. Because I was writing a story. I was not writing a script. And I would tell him he will go down, and then the camera would focus on this mirror, and then when the person, come back up, he will have like a big scare. And it was no, I'm the director. Let me do my job. Just give me the dialogues. So I had to then I learned the difference that you cannot, when you're writing a script, you can be very easygoing on the details. You don't have to make all the details because you'll never know. For example, we had on the first, we had an argument. There were 3 writers in one point in the TV series, and we were arguing because this rich family, they were going out, and one of the writers wanted to have the bodyguard to open the fence. And then the other writer was arguing that no, that because they have money, they should probably have a power fence opener. And so they were arguing about it, and I stood in the middle and was, trying to get them apart. There was actually a big fight in the end. But when that particular scene got shot, they didn't have a fence, so they shot it in the porch. So the fence argument became irrelevant.
I guess with TV shows, it probably doesn't come up as often since you have sets that you probably, or locations that you recycle. But with movies, yeah, I guess you can't write a sight gag if you don't know where things are going to be taking place. So.
Exactly. It's a bare bones story. I think that a script it's a bare bones story, and because what the most things that it has is dialogues and a little bit of settings. You don't have you just put like inside, rich house, day. That's it.
Do you find that that helps you when you're in the outlining phase of your novel? Is you can go through and go.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm an outliner, like I said, and it helped. And I actually outlines my scripts too, and I write down the scenes, and then I put like a daily goal, and okay, this scene must have 1,500 words, or this scene must have like 2,000 words, and that's how I make my daily goals and stuff. And it keeps me focused on the story, because that way I always be worried about getting writer's block, but know that if I have a path to follow, an outline to follow, I'll never hit a wall, because I know where the story is going.
So, I don't know. I just lost my entire train of thought. Okay, so thrillers are. I'm not a big. Like, I don't read a lot of thrillers. I enjoy the ones that I have read, but it's like I'm a fantasy and sci-fi reader. I'm mostly like big doorstop epic fantasy, usually.
I enjoy those too, don't worry.
Yeah.
I made an attempt to write one. I wrote one short story called Leads of a Master Archer that it's based on, portal fantasy, two guys moving a washing machine, and then there's an earthquake and they land into a place where they have to fight off dragons. But it was a short story. It was more like an experiment.
I would read that. Is that available on your website? Because I will read that. That is right up my alley.
Send it to me.
All right. Well, what I was gonna say is I write urban fantasy. I'm working on writing urban fantasy right now, and that's like detective and thriller meets fantasy. And I find that because of my background of reading the giant doorstop epic fantasy, I have a hard time focusing in on that suspense, thriller, mystery, plotting part. So I was wondering if you had any tips for me on how to make that part of my writing better.
Well, let's see. I would think that I just finished reading one that it's a YA, but it's still fantasy. The Hunger Games. I just finished reading The Mockingjay. And one thing she did to carry on the suspense that I noticed is she didn't write the end of the chapter where it actually ends the scene. She cuts the scene like, I don't know, 3/4 of the scene. She cuts the chapter. So then that makes the impulse to continue reading because you don't know what's going to happen. I guess that what I'm saying is finish the chapter with a cliffhanger. Basically, that's one little tip. Don't make it when you end it when he left and closed the door behind him. That's boring. Finish the scene or finish the chapter when he fired the gun and you don't know who got shot. That will increase.
That's actually really good advice for me because I'm sitting here thinking about what I've been working on the last 2 weeks and going, all of my scenes end at the very end of the scene. It's like, okay, now it's like a play and everyone just takes a bow at the end.
Yeah. It's a 3-act play.
Okay, see, that's good advice. Thank you.
Another one that, and I'm not inventing it, I mean, I'm just paying attention to what others are doing. It's, for example, short chapters. When they are short, you don't mind making a few. I remember that from books prior to books from the 80s, from the 70s, and prior to that, they are very long chapters, 10, 20 pages, and now chapters are 4 or 5 pages. And I think that adds to give you the sensation that you're reading faster.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left. So I just want to open up the floor for you for 5 minutes to let our viewers, your readers, my guy that likes me for some reason. Just tell them everything you think they should know about you as a writer, and where everything. Just lay it out there. 5 minutes.
Oh boy, that's. You should have told me about these kind of questions before. And the fun part is that I already made some vlogs, and I already showed all the covers and all the books. So now I got nothing, just to show them again, I guess. Yeah. Now, basically, I like thrillers, and my influences in thrillers are very different guys. And one is Ken Follett from England, one is Clive Cussler, one is Robert Ludlum. The Born Identity guy, So that was my school. I started reading thrillers that date back from the 70s, from the 80s, and I think that's an influence. They call my books as classical thrillers, with the classical feel of it. They're not based on the 70s or the 60s, but they have that feeling like old school. I don't go too much for gimmicks. I go more for suspense, for cliffhangers, and lots of action. And because I write also screenplays and for both TV and movies, I like my action scenes to be very cinematic, very grand, very action-packed.
So you write lots of dialogue, I imagine.
Well, actually, not that much. I do have dialogue, and one of the things that is probably because I'm not a native English speaker, I try too hard. But when I have a person speaking from Texas, I gave him his Texan accent, and I made a difference in the writing when I have him meet a guy from, say, Boston. One says car, and the other one says car. So I make that difference known, and I use that description. So people say that maybe I'm trying too hard because that's not my original language. But that's something.
I hear it all the time because my books take place in southern Missouri, which has a very distinct accent. And
oh, yeah.
And I only write. There's only one character who I write in the colloquial style. Like I write phonetically for her, and everyone else I just write out because all these people complain to me that you can't read in the dialogue, the dialect. But I love reading dialect writing. I love, especially, and of course, I listen to audiobooks a lot. And when you got that dialect going, it adds something.
It's better. Let me tell you, I had a hard time going through, for example, Huckleberry Finn. I even had to act the dialogues to make sure what they were trying to say because I didn't understand the words as they were written. It was one of the hardest books for me to read because of those dialects that he put there.
So I think that adds something to it, though, because it's like if I went and started talking to someone who spoke Creole from Louisiana, I would have no idea what they were saying.
What do you mean, the Yat accent? I know because, funny, my next novel is based in New Orleans. It's about a serial killer there. So I had the opportunity. I have relatives living there, and they were nice enough to let me crash at their house a couple of days. And they took me all sightseeing. So I have, so my next novel is there in New Orleans. So I had to learn a little bit of their dialogue, too.
Okay, well, we are at the half-hour mark, so unfortunately we are out of time. I think I can keep going on this conversation for a long time. So I want to thank you for being on the show. I will put a link to your website on the newwriterpodcast.com/JH.
Bográn.
Thank you, Bográn. And
it's a French name. Don't worry.
Okay, well, I studied French in high school, but I would always, again, accent, Missouri accent. I'll put a link to your webpage. I've got a link to your author profile on Amazon. Anything else? Anywhere else we should find you online?
I do. No, well, my website is my same blog, but I don't do much. I do have Facebook, and that's my 3 media outlets. I don't I mean, it's too complicated for me to go on Twitter and and everything, and Instagram and Fiverr, and it's just too much for me. So I concentrate on the ones that I can handle.
All right, you have a mailing list we can join?
Not right now. That's in the works, actually. So I'll include you when it's there, when it's done.
All right. All right, thank you so much for being on.
Well, thank you for having me. Have a nice night.
I had a great time. Thank you. And everybody go and check out the books, Firefall and Treasure Hunt. And check out the site, jhbográn.com, and enjoy your night. Thank you very much.